We're talking property now on the Business Breakfast, looking at the growing appetite here in the Gulf for UK country houses. Very big house in the country. That's what we're buying, apparently. Well, some of us, Middle Eastern investors, increasingly moving into that space, according to the real estate people, Knight Frank. We are very pleased to have in the studio Henry Faun, head of London International Project Sales at Knight Frank Middle East. Henry, thanks for joining us.
Randy, Richard, good morning.
Give us the figures. Henry, what are you seeing?
So in the past 3 years, we've seen a consecutive increase of Middle Eastern purchases becoming prominent in the country house market in the UK. Year on year, we've seen growth, actually all the way up now to the point that this year, when we're looking backward across 2019, Middle Eastern buyers are now the third largest in the country house market. So quite a significant statistic here.
And what's behind that?
Well, we've seen twofold. I mean, the largest is still the UK buyers, followed by Europeans. However, in more recent months and this past year, we found that perhaps the attractive sterling pound cooling off a little bit has made those country houses a little bit more obtainable.
We're talking big houses here, aren't we? We're not talking cosy cottages.
We are, yes. So the statistics here we ran were actually on the £5 million and above market, so very large houses indeed.
How much does schooling have to do with this as well? Because in the UK, one of the reasons that people buy houses where they buy houses is school zones.
Agreed. And that is exactly the same for our Middle Eastern investors coming into the UK country house market. Schooling is one of the most significant factors when looking for a house. Typically speaking, when travelling to the UK, it won't just be one or two from a family buying that country house. It will be the whole family, children included, and therefore schools are one of the key drivers for particular locations. You
mentioned the pound in there, and of course Brexit's had a massive impact on that. Where does the Brexit timeframe fit into this trend?
Very well. Now, we saw perhaps back in the initial shock of Brexit, where things were new to us, there was a cooling off of the country house market from the Middle Eastern buyers and for London as well. However, as that sterling decreased, demand increased as well because the prices looked that much more obtainable. More recently, as things have stabilised, we've seen across the board, not just country houses, but in London as well, larger demand from the Middle East and wider regions coming into the UK.
We're still figuring out the nitty-gritty of Brexit, though. I mean, trade deals with the EU, with the US, are just starting to be negotiated this week. I mean, is there still a bit of a wait-and-see factor in there?
For some investors, perhaps, Brandy, yes, I would agree. But when we're talking about this particular statistic, this is country houses. People are going to be living in these properties, and not purely for investment and getting a growth and a return. Therefore, if we're going to be living in them for the next 5, 10, 15, perhaps more years, then actually the political scene in the UK is very minimal compared to the time you will be enjoying it for your personal use.
Is there any investment case for buying a property like this? Could you, for example, Airbnb it out for weekends and weddings? I know it's not the primary reason. It's for rich people who can afford it. But is there a business case for these properties?
In some cases, yes. If you were going to buy the property and enjoy it for your family, no, you'd keep it for yourself and the family when you travel there. However, these larger country estates, there's twofold. Perhaps the wedding or otherwise event venue scenario could work very well. Secondly,
could work well or does work well? There are people who are making that work at the moment.
There are people that are making it work at the moment, but on a case-by-case basis. It would be incorrect to say a sweeping brush saying everything works very well. It depends on a case-by-case. Secondly to that, Richard, would actually be perhaps the more sporting entertainment. So we know that many of our Middle Eastern families here do enjoy hunting or otherwise, perhaps falconing. That can be reflected in the UK, maybe a bit of fishing or otherwise. So the sporting estates that can attract a bit of fishing or otherwise can certainly work well.
Well, Henry, look, we can't have you in here without asking you the coronavirus question. Are you seeing a virus effect on sales? What have you seen in the past few weeks?
In the past few weeks, we've seen things are pretty stable for now, actually. No particular uptick or downtick or otherwise, Brandy.
What about inquiries, though, and even just flying out to see properties? We've heard this morning that, I'm presuming the people buying 5 million quid houses aren't necessarily flying EasyJet or Ryanair, but BA cutting huge amounts of routes within Europe. Are potential buyers willing to travel at the moment?
We've seen no particular trend to advise on that yet. Perhaps that could be something to be discussed in the future, and we can look back upon this few weeks now.
Henry Faun is the head of London International Project Sales at Knight Frank Middle East. Thank you very much for joining us on the Business Breakfast this morning.
Thank you both very much.